Penguin Random House Audio presents The Forgotten Girls, a memoir of friendship and lost promise in rural America. This is the author, Monica Potts. For my mom. Author's note. I began returning to Clinton and reporting for this book in the spring of 2015. I moved back during Christmas 2017, and from that time on, I was both a participant in and an observer of everyday life here. I interviewed several friends and former classmates, especially Darci, who sat with me for hours, filling in her life story. Most of our conversations were recorded. I read through 13 of my childhood journal volumes, read Darci's diary with her permission, and checked facts against public records and newspaper clippings whenever possible. At times, I had to rely on memory. At Darci's request, I changed the names of her children. Prologue. One day when I was 6, my parents hauled my 2 younger sisters and me around Van Buren County with a realtor, looking for a new house to rent. At the time, we lived in a rundown trailer in Shirley, Arkansas, but my parents wanted to move back to our hometown of Clinton, 10 miles away, and at just over 2,500 people, the biggest town in the area, where my dad wanted to start his own plumbing business. None of the places that we looked at were affordable for us, or if they were not in livable condition. I have a sharp memory of my parents taking us gamely into the attic of a small house, promising it could be our bedroom and that we could climb the stairs every night on our own, only to find part of the roof missing and dead autumn leaves all over the floor. We bounced down unpaved, rutted dirt roads and curvy country highways in our Ford LTD station wagon, up and down the hills generously called mountains that form the southern edge of the Ozarks. We trekked through mud and gravel and pine needles. My parents kept the search going all day, even after it was clear nothing we saw would work. Tired and cranky, I finally made it known that I was done. "I hate this town and I don't want to move," I screamed, "and I hate all this nature." The realtor, whose cap of permed hair was shaped like a mushroom atop her head, looked back at me and cackled her smoker's laugh. "You'll think different someday." That memory comes to mind every time I'm on top of Bee Branch Mountain, which crests just south of Clinton, my hometown. For 20 years as an adult, I lived elsewhere, going to college outside of Philadelphia, and then living and working as a journalist in New York City, Stamford, Connecticut, and Washington, D.C. Whenever I came back for a visit, I had to drive over that mountain to get home from the airport in Little Rock. From its summit, I can see Clinton below me. Ahead of me, the mountains stretch north, a mass of green hills that roll all the way up to the middle of Missouri. My drive home had always been long and disorienting. Passing towns full of deprivation made me feel suffocated, as I had as a kid, and I felt pity for the people trapped there. But one day, as I was driving home from the airport, I was older, in my 30s. I looked out from the mountaintop, saw Clinton and the sparsely populated landscape beyond, and felt a flutter of homesickness. I've seen many landscapes that were objectively more beautiful. The man-made cityscapes of London and Paris and New York, the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, the Mediterranean, the temperate rainforests of the Pacific Northwest. But none of those places were where I came from. On Christmas Eve 2015, I was on Bee Branch Mountain again, this time looking for my childhood best friend, Darci Bronner. Darci and I had reconnected 8 months earlier when she reached out to me through Facebook. Before that, I'd seen her only once since high school, briefly, at my dad's funeral in November 2006. I'd been back in Clinton a number of times since we'd gotten back in touch, and we'd spent a lot of time together, catching up and getting to know each other again. Before flying in for Christmas, I had let her know I'd be in Clinton for the holiday, and she had asked me to drive her to Little Rock once I got there. It was a long trip that I didn't want to make right after I got home, but I didn't know when I'd get another chance to see her. I warned Darci that I would need to get underway early in the morning so that I could return to my mother's house by 3 p.m. Mama needed her car for last-minute Christmas errands. I was also eager to have a nice dinner with my family, my mom, my sister, and my partner, Samir, who'd be waiting in the house for me to return. When I set out to pick her up that morning, I followed the directions I'd scribbled in a reporter's notebook. I followed them south on the highway and then up Bee Branch Mountain. Across from the flooded old rock quarry where we used to go swimming, where minerals turned the water sapphire blue, I turned onto a little dirt road. I hoped Google Maps would help me navigate the rest of the way. Darci was staying with a man named James, but she hadn't seemed entirely sure where he lived, even as she tried to explain it to me. On paper, she kept saying, sounding drunk. I'm only staying at that address on paper. Do you understand? I didn't. The road at the top of the mountain, rocky and heavily rutted, looked as though it hadn't been graded in decades. If I'd met another car coming the other direction, I would have had to pull over into the ditch to let it pass. Knee-high, weedy grass lined the edges of the road, and brown vines covered the barren trees like a wintry jungle. I got no cell reception, and my Google Maps app gave me up for lost. I could only surmise from the mailboxes that someone lived back here. I pushed forward, despite my fear of damaging the 2-year-old Buick SUV I'd just helped my mom buy. It wasn't fit for such a road. The first house I saw, James's father's, was a double-wide trailer, blue with neat trim. Behind it was James's little single-wide. It was small and weather-beaten, with corrugated metal walls that would not resist a strong wind, and like so many trailers in the area, it had a wooden porch and a wood-frame exoskeleton, all working together to prop it up. 4 dogs ran up to greet my car, and when they wouldn't move, I parked along the road far from the house. Getting out, I was thankful I'd worn my boots and old yoga pants, which I didn't mind getting dirty. There was a camper off to the side beneath a garage-sized wooden shed and a muddy yard. 2 lawn chairs had been set up around a meat smoker that smelled of chicken. A path of stones led me to the trailer. A man I took to be James opened the door. He was a couple of inches taller than my own 5'5", thin and wiry, with a kind of tanned, rough skin white people get after years of outside work, and a mop of dirty blonde hair. He was wearing a Budweiser t-shirt and holding a Budweiser can. "Are you Darci's friend?" he asked. "She should be ready any minute." He turned and I followed him inside. The trailer was gloomy, with dark, fake wood-paneled walls and too few windows curtained with dark sheets. It had a kitchen on one end, with cabinets of particle board and laminate, and a little kitchen island stacked with papers and food and beer. The living room was big enough only for a couch and a TV. A Great Dane-sized mutt lifted its head in excitement. A man who was older than James, with pale skin, dark hair, and a mustache was sitting there, and I introduced myself. "Was Billy Potts your daddy?" he asked. I said yes. He looked at me with eyes that were watery from beer. I knew him. He was a good man. Both he and James were working on a 48-pack on the counter. Darci emerged from the only bedroom, holding a mason jar that smelled strongly of apple wine. "Give me a minute. I just need to find my makeup bag." She brushed her fingers through her curly black hair. She had been straightening her hair since we were kids, but now she seemed to be getting the job only half done. She'd pulled it back into a headband, but pieces kept popping out like unruly twigs. She wore wide, flowing, multicolored, multi-patterned pants and a tank top. Her voice was raspy, her speech punctuated with quick staccato laughs. She'd always liked to laugh and to make people laugh, and often wore half a smirk, as if she were entertained by the world. Whenever I saw her, it felt like we'd never stopped knowing each other. I followed her into the small bedroom and sat down on the edge of the bed. She kept turning around, forgetting from one minute to the next what she was doing. Pieces of hair would pop up. She'd smooth them down, then put on makeup, then look for something, over and over again. The dogs tumbled into the bedroom, and I patted them while fending off offers for beer from the men. "We need to get on the road," I nudged, and we finally made it out of the bedroom. Darci stuffed her cigarettes and lighter into her purse, set down her mason jar, and went up to James, who was pulling food out of the decrepit fridge. "I need some money," she said bluntly. He gave her a 20, and she gave him a kiss. Darci and James had met only weeks before. Before staying at his place, I'd later learn, she'd had no income and been homeless. Was her need for shelter the reason for the relationship?
Sample complete. Ready to continue?